see people on the streets as an expression of actual support rather than people who might have been paid to show up at protests. It does seem odd to me that if your country is suffering an attempted military takeover, the idea that the first thing anyone would do is run to a store and buy a Russian flag, that strikes me as somewhat an unlikely situation.
This is my video update from Moscow, Russia on this Wednesday afternoon, August the 9th. Let's talk about some news. And right now I am just outside of the Kremlin, right outside of Red Square. And right over there is the Four Seasons Hotel. And the government Duma building is right over there. That's Tverskaya Avenue, and you have a bunch of hotels here. The National Hotel, I believe, is over there, and the Bolshoi Ballet is down that way. And I'm pretty much in the heart of the city, the heart of Moscow. And actually right under me, like you see that dome over there, right under me is a three-floor shopping mall. So let's talk about some news now that you know where I am and what is surrounding me. And let's start things off with an update on Niger and an interview that U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken gave to the UK state-run media outlet, the BBC, where Blinken said that Russia, Wagner, let's not say Russia, Wagner is taking advantage of instability in Niger. And this is what Blinken told the BBC, and I quote, "I think what happened and what continues to happen in Niger was not instigated by Russia or by Wagner, but they tried to take advantage of it. Every single place that this Wagner group has gone, death, destruction, and exploitation have followed." That's the statement coming from the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. Projection much, Mr. Secretary of State? Anyway, what is going on here? Because a week ago there was no talk of Russia or Wagner involvement in Niger, and then yesterday you had Victoria Nuland visit Niger, and she threw out the Wagner-Niger connection. She actually told the military coup government in Niger not to cozy up to Wagner, not to cozy up to Russia. And now you have the U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, telling the BBC that Wagner is trying to capitalize on the instability in Niger. So what I believe is going on here is that the Biden White House, the neocons in the State Department, they're moving us along to a narrative where they're going to connect Wagner and Russia to Niger, and then Wagner and Russia to instability in Africa. And that's going to be the narrative that they're going to use to try and dislodge Russia and Russia's presence and Wagner's presence from all of Africa. Really what is happening in Niger and in Africa is kind of the same policy that the U.S. uses around the world as it fights this war against, let's say, against Russia, China, the multipolar world, which is that the U.S. goes after Russia first, and by trying to dislodge Russia or weaken Russia or dismantle Russia, they can then focus in on China, because China is the main goal. That's the big enemy in all of this. So they first attack Russia in order to get to China, which is kind of the strategy that we see playing out in Ukraine. You first try to weaken, destabilize, balkanize Russia, and then you have a clear path towards China, and you remove the main big competitor from the world stage, and you have forever global hegemony. So Africa is kind of like a a microcosm of what the U.S. strategy is as it fights this conflict against the rising multipolar world. So let's create a connection between Wagner and Russia and Niger. Then let's create that connection between Wagner, Russia, and Africa. Let's try to dislodge Russia's presence in Africa. And then that will open up the path for us to remove China's presence and China's influence in Africa. That's what I believe is the U.S. State Department and the neocon strategy in all of this. Anyway, The Economist, which is a neocon publication, they came out with an article with the title, "After Niger's coup, the drums of war are growing louder. So is opposition to restoring the government by force." That is the article from The Economist. And in this article, The Economist admits that 73% of the population in Niger supports the military junta. This is what neocon publication The Economist is admitting. 73% of the population is actually in support of this military junta. And Mali and Burkina Faso, they actually sent a letter to the African Union and to the United Nations, and they called on these organizations to prevent some sort of military intervention, whether it's coming from France, from the United States, or from the ECOWAS countries. And finally, we have a statement from Maria Zakharova, the Foreign Ministry spokeswoman. And this is what she said in reference to Niger and Victoria Nuland's recent trip to Niger. And I quote, "Victoria Nuland thought that with Niger, you can do the same as with Ukraine. Put a couple of buns in a plastic bag and fool them. Such banana regimes as in Kiev are no longer to be found." And so that is the statement from Maria Zakharova. I have nothing further to add to that statement. So let's move on and talk about what's going on in Russia. So this morning there was an explosion on an optical factory in an area known as Sergiyev, Posad, which is about an hour and a half outside of Moscow. And this optics factory also manufactures, from what I understand, military equipment. And we haven't heard, or at least I haven't seen up until the time that I'm recording this video, an official statement from the Russian government or the Russian Ministry of Defense or the mayor of Moscow or the mayor of the Moscow region. We haven't heard any explanation as to what caused this explosion. The last I read, something like 30 or 35 people were injured. I'm not sure if there were any deaths in this explosion. And the last I read was that this was caused to some sort of technical issue. Procedures weren't followed or something happened on a technical level, and that's what caused the explosion. That's all I have. There is speculation that this could have been a drone. It's just speculation that this was a drone. There's also speculation that this could have been some sort of sabotage, or it could have been an accident at this factory. So we don't know just yet what caused this explosion, but there were drones that were sent in the direction of Moscow yesterday as well, and those drones, according to the Moscow mayor and the Russian Ministry of Defense, were repelled and they were brought down. So let's give it some time, and I'm sure we'll get an explanation for this explosion in Sergiyev Posad. And if you believe that explanation, great. If you don't, and you're still doubtful as to what caused this explosion at this optics factory, then That's also great. We'll leave it there. That's all the information that I have. So we could move on to the Russian defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, and he was giving a speech to the military commanders and the military assembly. And Sergei Shoigu, he said some very interesting things. And I'm going to read you a summary of what Sergei Shoigu said from the Twitter account of Zlati71. And these are the main points from Sergei Shoigu's speech. Now, one country is referenced multiple times in Shoigu's address to the military officials. And you're going to see what country is referenced multiple times from the Russian defense minister. Russia will strengthen the grouping of troops on the western borders. Since February, Ukraine has received from the West hundreds of tanks, more than 4,000 armored vehicles, over 1,100 artillery pieces, and dozens of MLRS and air defense systems. The total amount of assistance from NATO, the European Union, and their partners to Ukraine exceeded $160 billion. The supply of prohibited cluster munitions to Ukraine is a U.S. war crime and is dictated by the growing deficit of the armed forces of Ukraine. The readiness of the West to invest resources in Ukraine to turn the situation on the battlefield creates serious risks of further escalation of the conflict. Poland has become the main instrument of U.S. anti-Russian policy. Poland has plans to create a Polish-Ukrainian union, ostensibly for security, but in fact for the occupation of Western Ukraine. About 360,000 servicemen are stationed in close proximity to the borders of the Union state, Russia, Belarus. And Sergei Shoigu, in the last bullet point statement I read, is obviously referring to Poland. So Poland comes up 4 times in this summary list from the Twitter account of Zlati71 from Sergei Shoigu's address the other day, which means that the Russian Ministry of Defense is very concerned about Poland. Now, I don't know if Sergei Shoigu is sending a warning to the Russian government, to the Putin administration, or if he is sending a warning to Poland. Perhaps another warning to Poland following Putin's warning to Poland, which he gave a couple of weeks ago, which is pull back, stop escalating close to Belarus. Belarus had the Belarus military. They also had military drills as well the other day. And we also had news of Poland moving another 1,000 soldiers close to the border with Belarus. The excuse that Poland uses is that they're moving all this hardware and all this these soldiers to the border with Belarus because they're afraid of some sort of Wagner incursion or Wagner sabotage inside of Poland. Do you see a pattern forming here with Wagner? It seems like the collective West is going to use Wagner for a whole lot of military buildup in order to justify a whole lot of military buildup and escalation. So now you have Poland building up their military close to the border with Belarus. The excuse is Wagner. Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense, he is telling the Russian government, the Russian military staff, the Putin administration, and perhaps even Poland that Russia is focused in on the activity close to Belarus, and he mentions the 360,000 servicemen stationed in close proximity to the borders of the Union state. When Shoigu says the Union state, he of course means Belarus, but he also means Russia, and he is saying here that if Poland were to do anything in the direction towards Belarus, then Russia would respond, because this is the borders of the Union State and Russia is obligated to take action. So that is the statement from the Russian Minister of Defense. A whole lot of escalation going on, and it's all Wagner's fault. I think that's pretty much the narrative from the collective West. Let's see here. Foreign Policy magazine, which is another neocon publication, they ran an article yesterday with the title, I believe they ran this article yesterday with the title, "Backdoor Negotiations Over Ukraine Would Be a Disaster. Mediation offers from China aren't made in good faith." So this article is kind of written as a summary to the Saudi Arabia, U.S., Ukraine Jeddah summit, where, according to even NBC, China stole the show at that summit, because the U.S. and Ukraine, their plans was to push the Zelensky formula, and then China came in, they showed up, and they said, forget the Zelensky formula. We have to focus in on a ceasefire. We have to focus in on the Chinese peace plan, the peace roadmap that China put out there about, say, 3-4 months ago. And we also need to take into consideration Russia's red line. And that was the plan that dominated the conference in Jeddah. And Foreign Policy magazine, they're saying that the collective West, the Biden White House, the entire world, and especially Ukraine, they need to be very careful in their dealings with China, because China is not a good faith actor. Actually, this article takes it one step further, and it says that not only is China not a good faith actor when it comes to finding a solution in Ukraine, but it says that Africa and Saudi Arabia are not good faith mediators and actors when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine. And the article says that China, Africa, Saudi Arabia cannot be trusted by the Biden White House. They cannot be trusted by the Zelensky regime. They are aligned with BRICS. They are aligned with the multipolar world order. And most importantly, according to FP, they are aligned with Russia. And so the only solution, according to Foreign Policy magazine, is further Biden escalation. And the article actually says that no conflict in history, like what we're seeing in Ukraine, has ever ended in a stalemate or a mediated settlement. It has always resulted in one side dominating the other, and the one side forcing terms on the losing side. And FP is arguing that the Biden White House needs to escalate a whole lot more and a whole lot faster, so that it is the collective West and Ukraine that forces terms on Russia, and not the other way around. And the entire collective West, they need to forget about China, Saudi Arabia, and Africa as far as a ceasefire in Ukraine is concerned. Basically, the article says that there's going to be no peace in Ukraine. It is going to be a military outcome that dictates the terms of this conflict. And the Biden White House, they need to come to terms with that fact, and they need to ramp things up in Ukraine from a military standpoint. And the Telegraph, they also put out an article yesterday with the title, "The Deadly Lancet Suicide Drone Putin is Using to Batter Ukrainian Troops. The low-cost UAV, able to destroy vehicles many times its size and value, has become a problem for Ukrainian troops along the front line." So the Telegraph is admitting that the Russian military, they are using Lancet drones, very inexpensive but effective Lancet drones, to demolish the very expensive and very ineffective NATO weaponry that was sent to Ukraine, like those very ineffective but very expensive Leopard tanks. And the truth of the matter is, as far as the Lancet drone is concerned, is that Russia is ramping up production of these Lancet drones. And from what I understand, we are going to be seeing a whole lot of drones being used by the Russian military going forward in this conflict in Ukraine. And this is the pattern of where things are going with this conflict. Russia is ramping up its military production of drones and tanks and missiles and ammunition. Russia's military is building up strength and is getting bigger and bigger, while Ukraine's military has been demolished not once, but 2 times. Ukraine is now on its 3rd military. Ukraine has no military production to speak of. It relies completely 100% on Collective West and NATO handouts. And the Collective West and NATO, they are struggling to keep up with Russian military production in this war of attrition. So the Russian military is getting stronger. The Ukraine military is getting weaker. The Collective West military is getting weaker. And the Ukraine military manpower is also diminishing. So that is the basic trajectory of this conflict. How much longer can the Collective West keep this going? According to Biden, for as long as it takes, right? That's how long they can keep this thing going. It's like trying to pay the rent and you don't have a job. You have no possibility of getting a job. And for the past 1.5 years, you have been relying on handouts from strangers, not even friends and family. You've been relying on handouts and loans from strangers to pay the rent. It's something like that. How much longer can this continue? God only knows. I don't think for that much longer. But according to the Biden White House and according to Ursula von der Crazy and Jungle Joseph, this is going to last for as long as it takes. So we can shift gears now and talk about the United States and talk about one of the Biden White House's most trusted allies, and that is Nancy Pelosi. And she said yesterday, this is an interesting statement from Nancy Pelosi before I get into my clown world. She said that there would be no more USA if Trump regains the presidency. The Democratic representative had previously called Trump a scary puppy following his latest indictment. And Nancy Pelosi's statement, she actually says that if Trump were to be elected president, the whole world would be on fire, and that Trump would bring into the White House his criminal enterprise. Projection much, Nancy Pelosi? Biden White House, world on fire. Biden White House, criminal enterprise. Biden, Hunter, the big guy, Burisma. I mean, my God. Boy, they really do live in a bubble. Anyway, let's get to my clown world. And let's see here. The UK media. The UK media is absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because they put out some very interesting clown world stories. And they had this from The Guardian the other day. Russia spreading false claims about Quran burnings to harm NATO bid, says Sweden. Defense agency says Moscow is using the protests in Stockholm to stir tensions between Arab countries and the West. Russia's fault. No, Wagner's fault. It's Wagner's fault. Wagner's doing this, Sweden. Wagner is preventing you from joining NATO. The Sunday Times, the UK Sunday Times, they had an article with the title, Iranian state is now the biggest threat to the UK. It's not only Wagner's fault, it's not only Russia's fault. Wagner and Russia are not only the biggest threat to the UK, but now it is Iran that is the biggest threat to the UK, according to the Sunday Times. And finally, let's walk around a bit for this final clown world. Today I didn't walk as much. I've been doing a lot of walking the past couple of weeks, and so I figured I would sit down a bit for this video. But this final clown world is a good one, and it has to do with Justin Trudeau and his latest cinema tweet. It seems like Trudeau is making a pattern of putting out tweets from his time at the movie theaters. And in this tweet, Justin Trudeau, I imagine that this is his daughter in this tweet, and he says, balancing things out, Oppenheimer with Ella. And this follows up on Trudeau's tweet the other day with his son. I found out it was his son. I thought it was like Justin Bieber or something, but everyone let me know that that was his son. And they went to see Barbie, the movie Barbie, and Trudeau tweeted Team Barbie. Now he is putting out a tweet from his time with his daughter watching Oppenheimer. And so I said in my video from Gorky Park, where I talked about the Team Barbie tweet, that Trudeau was baiting us and was trolling us, and I think I'm right. I think I have been justified. I knew that Justin was trolling us when he put out that Team Barbie tweet, and you can tell he's trolling us with this Oppenheimer tweet. This Oppenheimer photo that he has taken with his daughter. A lot of people have commented on the different attire and aesthetics for Justin Trudeau in this tweet from the movie Oppenheimer. Anyway, he's trolling us, everybody. That's all I have to say. I'm not going to get into this. Justin, I know what you're trying to do. I know you're trying to bait us. It's not going to work. Very clever, but we're not going to take the bait. That is the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, and Rockfin. And go to the Duran shop. Use the code GOODDAY and get 20% off. Today I'm wearing, get 10% off. Today I'm wearing my Duran, Bulgaria flag t-shirts here in Moscow, right outside of Red Square.